What's unfolding in Virginia right now? The Supreme Court just ruled 6-3, effectively giving Texas the green light to redraw its congressional maps in favor of Republicans. And Texas isn't holding back. They're aiming for 5 new GOP seats before the 2026 midterms. Bold. Absolutely. Risky. Very. But Virginia isn't standing by quietly. Senate President pro tempore Louise Lucas made it clear she has a response, saying, "I've got something in store for Texas." And no, she's not talking about a polite letter, she's talking action. Back in November 2025, she promised a 10:1 approach, and now she's putting it on the table. Here's why that matters. When Republicans last drew Virginia's map, they packed black voters into a single district and expected the community to be thankful. Lucas is sending a direct message. You want one district? Let's see how that works for you. The Virginia House Speaker, Don Scott, is on board too, suggesting that a 10-1 congressional map isn't off the table. Currently, Virginia's delegation is 6 Democrats to 5 Republicans. But with Trump's approval sliding, he's at -12% in the latest Morning Consult poll, the political landscape is shifting fast. Virginia's potential countermove could be more than strategic. It could be a game-changer. Let's slow down and unpack what the Supreme Court actually said, because that's the key to why Virginia sees an opening. The court ruled that Texas qualifies for interim relief, meaning the legislature is presumed to be acting in good faith, no matter what the evidence shows. In short, the district court overstepped by questioning them. Challengers didn't get a fair shake, and we're too close to the midterms anyway. Translation: Texas, redraw those maps however you want, even if it's controversial or heavily partisan. And that's exactly why Virginia is gearing up to respond. House Speaker Don Scott put it bluntly. Sooner or later, you have to stand up to the bully. Democrats in Virginia aren't going to sit back while Texas, North Carolina, Indiana, or Florida manipulate the midterms. This isn't about gerrymandering for advantage. It's about leveling the playing field. We can't pretend they're playing fair. We have to fight back, Scott said. So what's the plan? First, Virginia has already passed a constitutional amendment needed for redistricting. Next, a follow-up election on January 14th will reaffirm it. Then it goes to voters, likely in April, giving Virginia the legal green light to redraw maps in time for 2026. While the exact strategy isn't public, Scott hinted a 10-1 map is possible, especially after Democrats expanded their House majority last cycle. Here's what most people miss. Virginia isn't just responding to Texas. They're responding to the broader Trump-era strategy that's undermining voters' influence nationwide. Republicans tied to MAGA have repeatedly shown little regard for responsible governance, and Virginia isn't going to stand for it. Whether it's federal workers losing jobs under Elon Musk's privatization moves, communities slammed by rising costs, or broader systemic failures, voters are noticing, and they're paying attention. Scott pointed out that in the last cycle, Democrats reclaimed 5 districts Trump had carried in 2024. People see when they've been misled, and they're not forgetting. Here's why this matters. If Republicans in Virginia keep enabling Trump-style politics without accountability, voters lose their voice. But Virginia Democrats are showing it's possible to push back while still playing by the rules. Scott put it plainly, the goal isn't flashy politics, it's making government work for people again. Competent, responsible governance. A government that delivers. He even coined a phrase, make America boring again. Because after all the chaos, people just want stability, predictability, and results, not constant crises, scandals, and hyper-partisan chaos. Some context. Back in November 2025, Democrats didn't just hold their ground, they expanded. Abigail Spanberger won by 15 points, and the Democrats went from a 51-49 majority to a 64-36 supermajority in the House of Delegates. That kind of momentum gives them real leverage to push for maps that reflect the actual voting population, not manipulated partisan advantage. Scott is crystal clear, this isn't about revenge or political games. It's about protecting the franchise and making sure the people who show up to vote actually have their voices reflected in outcomes. And here's the fascinating part. By not intervening in Texas, the Supreme Court essentially invited states like Virginia to play defense in ways that weren't possible before. Even in Texas, where legislators openly discussed race when drawing maps, a practice explicitly prohibited, courts were told to stand down. That's a seismic shift. For Democrats in Virginia, it's more than an opportunity. It's a call to action. If you can't stop the bad actors on one side, you have to make sure your own voters aren't disempowered. Scott didn't hold back on the hypocrisy either. Spare me the Republicans lecturing us on what we're doing when they won't say a word about Trump's actions in other states. And he's right. In Texas, North Carolina, Indiana, and now Florida, extreme mid-cycle gerrymandering is happening, and Republicans are silent. Meanwhile, they try to shame Virginia Democrats for simply responding to a clear threat to fair elections. That double standard isn't going unnoticed. Now, on to strategy. Scott and Lucas are hinting at something ambitious, a potential 10-to-1 map across multiple districts. Bold. Absolutely. But it's grounded in recent results. Democrats didn't just defend their ground, they flipped districts Trump carried in 2024. The data shows Virginia voters are moving away from mega-style politics when given the chance. That gives Democrats an unusual level of confidence to craft maps that reflect real voter intent rather than letting partisan advantage dominate. And here's a subtle but crucial point. This isn't just about Virginia. What happens here could become a blueprint for other states facing aggressive gerrymandering. It's proof that state legislators can respond within legal frameworks to ensure fair representation. In other words, Virginia could be setting a precedent for pushing back against the Supreme Court's hands-off approach. Scott emphasized one thing clearly: this isn't about partisan theatrics. It's about results. Winning elections is only step one. You also have to deliver. Government has to function competently, responsibly, and transparently. That's why Democrats are moving quickly with constitutional amendments, voter approval, and the legislative process. Every step is calculated to make sure Virginians have a real say in how their representation is structured, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Trump-style politics has shown what happens when power is concentrated without accountability. Communities lose representation, jobs are at risk, costs rise, and people feel abandoned. Virginia Democrats are essentially saying, we can't let that happen here. Not again. Not on our watch. They're taking the Supreme Court's decision and turning it into an opportunity to protect voters rather than let partisan advantage dictate outcomes. Scott framed it in human terms: veterans, government workers, families, real people whose lives are directly impacted by policy decisions and political maneuvering. This isn't abstract politics. These decisions affect jobs, healthcare, and daily life. The message is simple. Virginia Democrats want to make sure those people have a voice and that their votes truly matter. Scott also addressed the broader principle of accountability and responsibility in governance. He criticized Trump and MAGA-aligned Republicans for prioritizing personal or partisan gain over the public good, contrasting that with Virginia Democrats' measured, strategic approach focused on delivering real results. For him, this is about restoring trust in government and ensuring elections are fair, representative, and meaningful. So what does this mean moving forward? Virginia is moving fast, with strategy and political courage, to make sure voters actually have a say in the next election. Trump's popularity is dropping. Democrats have momentum. And the Supreme Court's hands-off approach has created a window for bold action. The 10-to-1 map, if it comes to pass, won't just be a tactical maneuver, it will be a statement. Virginia will fight for fair representation and refuse to be bullied by partisan games. At its core, this is about more than maps. It's about protecting the voice of everyday Americans, veterans, workers, and families, and making sure elections reflect their interests. As Scott puts it, you have to win, and then you have to deliver. Virginia is showing how that can happen in real time, and it could reshape how states respond to extreme partisan tactics nationwide.